Hello, it's Father Francis, and this is a new look at Lent. It's Father Francis once again on this fourth Sunday of Lent. And again, let's take a different look at Lent. There's a wonderful story about a very famous Shakespearean actor in England. And he was at a rather important banquet where they were honoring him. And so at the dessert time, towards the end of the meal, the famous actor stood up and he said, "At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to recite any famous quotes from Shakespeare or the Bible that you might have." And so a lot of people would ask him to maybe recite things like the St. Crispin's Day speech from Henry V, or perhaps maybe some of the monologues from Richard III and A Midsummer Night's Dream, and so on and so forth. Maybe even to quote some Winston Churchill speeches. But finally, there was the interesting thing. Somebody asked this actor if he would be able to recite the Lord's Prayer, Psalm 23, which is what we celebrate today as our responsorial psalm. And the actor, who was a very dignified and just a very urbane fellow and just a great actor, he, of course, was able to say, recite the Lord's Prayer with great depth and meaning. And people were, beginning to applaud him. And he had noticed during the banquet meal that there was a pastor. Perhaps he was in a Roman collar, or maybe somebody pointed him out as being a minister. And the actor says, "Now, wait a minute, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear the pastor back there. I want him to recite the Lord's Prayer for us all." And so this rather humble, very insignificant gentleman, maybe a little advanced in years, he stood up, and everybody was listening very attentively, very quiet in the room. And this minister began to say, "The Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want." He went on to recite the entire Lord's Prayer. And at the end he sat down and everybody was noticeably moved. And the actor got back up on the podium and says, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, I may know the Lord is my shepherd, but this pastor certainly knows the shepherd as his Lord." In other words, there's sometimes a difference between knowing about something religious and really knowing the source of that faith, that religious faith. In John's Gospel today, we encounter something of an enigma. Jesus takes this man who was born blind, who probably was well known to all of the villagers, people of the town, and he heals his eyes. And now this man, for the first time, is able to see. But what's really fascinating is that that's not the end of the story. In fact, everything that comes in the wake of this whole thing has been almost pretext to get to the real message of today's gospel. Because the people that are amazed that this blind man has been healed, they want to know who and how this came about. And so they drag him in and they begin to kind of not just question him, but kind of interrogate him, and they really want an answer. But the answer that he gives is not really one that they're expecting or ready for. And he keeps saying, "Well, this man named Jesus, he's the one who healed me." And it even has a bit of humor in this gospel, because they keep saying, "Well, now tell us again." And they start threatening him. "Remember, you're under oath and we can punish you if you tell us a lie." And he goes, "Well, I told you, this man named Jesus, he's the one who healed me." And they said, "Well, we don't recognize this Jesus. We don't see him," basically. We don't believe in him. And finally, they asked like the third time, "Well, come on, now tell us how this happened. Who did this to you?" And he finally says, "Well, his name is Jesus. Do you want to be one of his followers too?" And they go crazy. They don't want to hear about Jesus. And the irony is that a blind man who now is able to see turns the tables on those who have natural sight, but they can't see because they can't see Jesus for who he is. So during this Lent, I would encourage you to take a deeper look, first of all, at our readings we celebrate in this fourth Sunday of Lent, but also those times when God might have been trying to reveal something to you and you kind of just shook your head and said, no, I'm not buying that, anything but that. Because sometimes we're closing ourselves off. Sometimes we're refusing to see when God is really intervening in our lives. Well, this has been Father Francis with another new look at Lent. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you here next week.